The U.S. president has announced a rare Republican convention, which is expected to take place before the crucial 2026 midterm elections in the country. In a Truth Social post, Donald Trump said, I'm quoting, "The Republicans are going to do a midterm convention in order to show the great things we have done since the presidential election of 2024, time and place to be determined." The Republican Party has historically not held a midterm convention. Traditionally, the Red Camp has hosted a convention every 4 years, which is basically to formally nominate the presidential candidate. However, this time, Democrats also announced a midterm convention earlier, and the decision from both parties signaling the high stakes that lie ahead as far as the midterm elections are concerned, with narrow margins on the line for both sides. For Trump and his administration, meanwhile, the goal basically will be to keep hold of the Republican majority in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. And Democrats, meanwhile, will look to flip the narrow margin in the House in their favor and break the Republican Party's trifecta in a way. In fact, the announcement of the midterm conventions also coming at a significant time as far as the political discourse is concerned. Also, the widening divide in the United States, from executive orders to policy overhaul under the Trump administration, the conversation over the last few days has shifted to political violence. U.S. voters are increasingly concerned about the violence after Charlie Kirk was murdered at a university event. And a Reuters Ipsos poll showing roughly 2 out of 3 Americans believe harsh political rhetoric is fueling violence in the country. While the poll suggests that rising political rhetoric and violence may be directly proportional, the assassination of Charlie Kirk has further deepened the divide between the Democrats and the Republicans. The 3-day poll, which closed on Sunday, surveyed the adults from across the United States. In fact, it also reveals that Americans are increasingly concerned about political violence and the deepening partisan divisions in the country. Roughly 63% of the respondents to the Reuters Ipsos poll said the way Americans talk about political issues does a lot to encourage violence. Another 31% saying the country's approach to political discourse contributes a little to political violence, while the remaining respondents either saw no impact or did not answer the question. And when asked just how tolerant Americans are of opposing viewpoints compared to 20 years ago, 79% said Americans have become less tolerant to differing views over the past 2 decades. Only 10% believe there has been little or no change as compared to 20 years ago. All right, we will be decoding for you what that poll has told us and, in fact, the key takeaways from the respondents' answers, and also the conventions that are set to take place and what the two sides are looking like. And with us on the broadcast this minute is Professor Andrew Latham, who is a distinguished scholar of international relations, strategic studies and political economy, with us from Minnesota, United States. Thanks very much for being here. Let me begin by asking you for your assessment of what's playing out. Of course, those conventions are extremely crucial ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. But first, your reaction to those poll results that we just brought to our viewers and the way in which the rhetoric and the conversations around political violence actually impact the situation on the ground.
Thanks for having me. The polling data doesn't actually surprise me at all. I think anybody who lives in this country and spends 5 minutes reading across different news outlets or watching different news outlets knows that we've seen heightened polarization. And not just polarization, but demonization of the other as well. So that this Charlie Kirk assassination / murder was instructive. I don't know what motivated the killer. I don't think anybody's quite sure about that yet. That's not the political issue. The political issue is how Democrats and Republicans reacted, how the right and left reacted. The left pointed fingers and said, he's an ultra-fascist. The assassin is an ultra-fascist. He's far right, blah, blah, blah. And the conservative / Republican center right said, no. He's clearly motivated by far left progressive ideology. And so no willingness, instinctive willingness to reflect, to wait, to see what the facts actually said. Both sides backed quickly into their hardened silos and accused the assassin of being a member of the other camp. So the polling data actually verifies what I think most people watching American political life would understand. Yeah, so we can take it from there.
Right. The announcement of this convention on part of the U.S. president and just how rare this, of course, is. But at the same time, what are the issues, according to you, that are top of the mind as far as the U.S. voter is concerned right now, apart from the Charlie Kirk and the gun violence issue?
Yes, well, I think there's partly a bit of an arms race going on here in the sense that once the Democrats decided they were going to have a convention, the Republicans obviously had to have one as well. The margins are tight. Republican polling data suggests that the Republicans aren't doing terribly well, but neither are the Democrats. And both, I think, are a little bit desperate in terms of bumping those numbers up, and they see these conventions as a means of doing that. For the Democrats pointing to the Republicans in the House and the Senate and the White House and saying, look how bad things are, we can do better. And the Republicans saying, well, things are actually getting better. If it weren't for those obstructionists on the Democrat side, we might actually make a lot more progress. The big issues, I think, quite apart from political violence, which is right now a big issue, but the underlying issue really is the economy. Which is not doing terribly well, despite the way that President Trump likes to spin it. The numbers aren't catastrophic or disastrous, but neither are they fantastic, as President Trump might put it. Whether it's unemployment, underemployment, cost of living, things of that nature. A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are experiencing this moment as an economic downturn. And they're hearing lots of talk about recession and stagflation and all kinds of other things that might be just around the corner. So I think the economy and violence, political violence, polarization are going to be the two big issues. And even if the Charlie Kirk assassination hadn't happened, I think polarization and gun violence still would have been on the agenda, because there have been multiple instances of apparently politically motivated violence in this country in the last few years. So it's a big issue.
All right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us with your perspectives. To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.